this thumbnail is gonna be so chaotic. Hopefully we got it. Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. As I'm sure you've guessed, if you've clicked on this video, you know that we're going to be unhauling some books today. I think we have about 20 to get through in total, and I'm going to try to keep this as brief as possible. I'm sure that won't be a problem. Most of the books on this list I didn't really like, so I haven't really thought about them, and I'm not sure how well I'll even be able to pitch them to you. As I'm sure you know, one of my big goals this year is to read just all of the books that I haven't read yet on my shelves, and unhaul any of the ones that are below like a 3.5 or 4 star, or ones that I just don't really feel like I had a strong connection to. Even if they were a good book, I just don't want to keep things on my shelves that I don't feel are a reflection of my reading taste. So let's go ahead and just get started. We'll go ahead and cruise through. The first book I'm getting rid of is Someone We Know by Sherry Lupina. This is a really solid thriller author for me. This is my least favorite of her books. I don't remember a ton about it. I know there's a murder. We're in the classic like Sherry Lupina setup where we're in a like wealthy suburban neighborhood. There's a murder, there's secrets, lots of characters and different perspectives involved, and lots of people contributing to the mystery. I don't remember loving this one. I think I gave it 3 stars, and no offense to mass market paperbacks, I will read them, but I don't like them on my shelves, so that is just the final reason to get this off of them. I know you can't see if I tip you up on my top shelf. I might have to lift you. On my top shelf, I do have a collection of Sherry Lupina's books right here that are my favorites, and those will be staying. But yeah, this one overall, my least favorite one. It was kind of just a flop for me. I think the more she writes, the worse her books get. That sounds kind of mean, but like her more recent books have really not been a hit for me. The Couple Next Door and An Unwanted Guest, those two are probably my favorites and like really solid, and those are, I think, her 2 first books. And the more she writes, the less I care. So this one's going away. Next, I have a poetry book, which is Semicolon. This was really popular, I think, in like 2019, 2020. And I thought that I was a poetry girl. I really did. I tried to be. I thought that I was, but now I just find all poetry really cheesy, and I don't really like it that much. I don't remember anything about this. I'm sure they're all just like sappy teenage love poems or heartbreak poems, and I don't really gel with that anymore. I don't know if I ever really did. I think I just wanted to be a poetry girly, and I found this one like hiding behind books on my shelves when I was cleaning them the other day. So that one is making her exit. Then I have The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. I read this recently in a video, although I don't remember which one. This is like a booktube darling, and I did have a really fun time reading it. It went super fast. There's this like magical chain of kind of sinister events happening. It's told from the perspective of a little boy, and he's now grown, and he has returned to this place where all of the events happened when he was a child. He's come back for a funeral, so now he's an adult, and he's just reflecting on this very strange time in his life. I don't think I'm doing a very good job pitching it. I really did like this. I gave it like 3.5 stars, I think. This was a fun book. It was quick, but I don't see myself ever feeling the need to reach for this again. Nor is this a book that I really emotionally connected with, so I just don't feel that it needs a space on my shelves. Okay, then I have this ARC. It's not an ARC anymore. This came out a couple years ago, but I did win an ARC copy of it. This is a sci-fi book told in, I think, 4 different parts and perspectives, and it's kind of all different stories that come together. It's kind of this futuristic love story where the world is kind of in ruins, and these 2 people are kind of time traveling. It's a hard premise to explain, but it sounded really interesting, and I entered a giveaway to win it, and shockingly I won it, and I really didn't like it. The writing didn't work for me. The way that the sci-fi elements were being described was just not something that I connected to. I did read the whole thing because when you're sent an ARC, like that's the respectful thing to do, I feel like, even if you're not really liking it. And it's been sitting on my shelves for a good long while now just because I wasn't really sure what to do with it. But my bookstore does accept ARCs. They don't sell them, they give them as gifts for people on their birthdays. So I hope that this finds someone who really does care about the topics in here and ends up loving it, but that person is not me. Okay, then I have The Gift by Danielle Steele. This is a like mass market author. She's written probably like 70 books by now at this point in her life. This one was written in the 90s. This is a kind of Christmassy novel. It's not a romance. It's just kind of a like literary contemporary story about this family whose daughter dies when she's very young. And then also in kind of a present day timeline, which is still not present day. It's set in like the 1950s or 60s maybe. But like years later, this young woman ends up coming into their lives, helping them heal from their trauma, right? It's set at Christmas time. It's really short. I read it in maybe like 2 days. I really didn't like it, but I read it for the Christmas atmosphere last year. And to be honest with you, my biggest issue in here was the dialogue. Like the story itself had some problems, okay? But the biggest issue was the dialogue. There was an ellipses in here in every single sentence of dialogue. I'm not joking. Every time one of the characters spoke, there was an ellipses. And it started to drive me pretty crazy by page 60, but by page 200, holy cow, that's insane. Why are we writing like that? So I didn't like this. I wouldn't recommend this to anyone, and that's all we're gonna say about that one. This is another one that I read last year, The 5 People You Meet in Heaven. This author has written a lot of books like this, and I decided to give this one a chance because it is a very popular book. It was sad, it made me cry, but I also like didn't really like the story. I feel like a lot of people are like, if a book makes me cry, it's 5 stars. For me, absolutely not. Like you can write a very sad book that hits me emotionally that really has no merit or standing overall. So I think I gave this 3 stars. I'm like glad that I know what this author's writing is like now. I will never pick up a book from him again, nor will I ever think about this book again. This is basically the story about an old man who dies, and he's meeting some different people along his journey to heaven. There's definitely not any huge religious connotations in here if you're like opposed to reading religious books. This isn't really that. This is kind of just a reflection on life and like life lessons that you learn. It's not really self-helpy, but it kind of felt self-helpy. I don't know. I feel like it was really trying to make you like reflect on your life and want to be a super amazing person, but it was like almost a little bit cringy at times, and then it made me like not want to do that. So that's this one. I think that this book was actually in the last UNHAUL video that I filmed, Heat and Dust, but I decided to keep it because I read the first chapter and I was interested in it, but I tried to read this again over the summer after I filmed that original UNHAUL video like 6 months ago, and I got to page like maybe 50 and this is not for me. This is set in, I believe, India, and we are just following some royalty, I think. I don't even remember, see? And there's no plot synopsis on this entire book. Anyway, we're following some royal people in India. It's historical fiction, and the writing in here is not super incredible. The story drew me in like the first chapter and then kind of lost me after that. I just didn't like the narration style nor the actual prose itself after we got through that original like intro chapter. So I'm not trying this again. This is a hard DNF for me, and it's going away now. Okay, I'm also getting rid of Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. I've read all of her books, but this one was not like the other two. First of all, this book has the tiniest little closest together font. Like, I guess it doesn't really look like that when I'm holding it up, but this book seriously took me so long to get through. I don't think that thrillers in general should be like over 400 pages unless there's like another plotline going on, but in this there was not. It's very vulgar and like graphic, and while I appreciate that in certain thrillers to like set a tonal atmosphere, in this it just felt too much for me. There's like some scenes in here that just were like gross. Not so much with like blood and gore, but just with like random descriptions. Basically the plot in this, we're following this young woman who her family was murdered a long time ago, and she has no real memories of the night, but at the time she had convicted her brother. So now her brother is in prison because she thinks that she witnessed him in the house, but this book is about her questioning, like, was he really there? Did he really kill the rest of my family? what happened, I don't remember. So she's going on kind of this journey to figure out what's going on. We have a couple different POVs. I believe we get to read from her mom in here as well in the days leading up to the murder, and her brother leading up to the murder, and we're just trying to figure out what happened. And I just felt that this was far too intense for the story that it was trying to tell. It was just a lot for me. So I hope that someone that really likes like super dark and a little bit gross books finds this and reads it and enjoys it, but it does not need to be taking up resident space in my house. Then we're unhauling The Last House Guest by Megan Miranda, who is really a hit or miss author for me. There's been a couple thrillers that she's written that I've really, really liked, and there's been a couple thrillers that she's written that I've really, really not liked, and this was one of those ones. Again, I don't really remember what this was about, but I do remember it being fairly boring and also fairly easy to figure out what was going on. I believe we are following a girl whose best friend like went missing, and she was from a really wealthy family, and our main girl was not. But despite that, they became bestie girls, and it's presumed that she committed suicide, but we don't really know for sure. And now some like random evidence is coming up that maybe that's not the case years later, and main girly pop, whose name is Avery, is trying to figure out what happened for real. This was boring and long. Again, I feel like I read a lot of thrillers on this channel that I would recommend to people who are just getting into thrillers, because I think a lot of thrillers only really pack a punch now if they're doing something like really different, doing a mystery that I haven't seen before. And I read this over the summer, so obviously at this point in my life I've read probably like hundreds of thrillers, and this one was not anything special. Another thriller I'm getting rid of, The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. Me and Lisa Jewell do not really get along. I believe I also read this for a video on my channel, although I don't know which one. It was a while ago. All of Lisa Jewell's books to me just feel so standard, and I don't really like the way that she writes twists, and I don't really like the pacing that she uses in her books. And I know that she's like so beloved and she's considered like this amazing thriller author, but I have never read any book from her that I've given above 3 stars. This one was a 3 stars. It wasn't terrible, but again, her thrillers to me just feel very basic, and I just can't really jive with that vibe. I will say these books do have very short chapters. There's a couple different perspectives going on. It's kind of a generic formula that she uses in her books. And again, I think you could really like this if you've just started reading thrillers, but I did not. And I honestly don't know if I can read any more Lisa Jewell, because I think I read like 3 or 4 books from her now, and none of them have really impressed me. Next, I am unhauling Papa Goose, which is a nonfiction about this man who works for this scientific program. I think he lives in Sweden, maybe. Sweden, Germany, somewhere in Europe, okay, and he works for the scientific program that decided that they were going to raise some birds, some geese, and then use them for scientific research about weather patterns, altitude conditions, etc. So this was short. It had lots of pictures in it, and it still took me 2 weeks to read because it was so boring, and you could tell that so much of this writing was just fluff that was used to try to make this interesting and try to make me care about the geese as characters and the man as a character. I say characters, this is nonfiction, but care about them as figures in the story, and I did not. I think that this book could have been really interesting had it been told in like 100 pages, and we just actually told the story of what was going on, not all the extra sprinkles and whipped cream on top that we didn't need. So I gave this 2 stars. I find it hard to rate nonfiction because this man was just telling what happened, but in this case, I feel like he told the story in a way that was like so over embellished that it like ruined the purpose of this book and what it was trying to teach us. Next, I'm getting rid of Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney. I read this very recently on my channel. I'll link this video down below. I believe I read it in my January reading vlog. This mystery was easy to solve. It was kind of quick. There was some discussion of like fat shaming in this book that I didn't really like, and also just the general upkeep of women's appearances that I didn't really vibe with. There's no actual murder in this book either. We're just following this woman who's unconscious and she's trying to figure out how she got here. There was also like this random thread running through here that I don't know if we were supposed to think that like this person had something to do with it, but they didn't. But I just felt like it was really randomly inserted in here, and I don't know, I didn't really like this. I gave it 2.5 stars. Again, Alice Feeney is another author that's just very hit or miss for me. I've actually given a couple of her thrillers 5 stars, which is pretty rare for me to give a thriller 5 stars, but I've also read a couple books from her that I've given like 2 to 2.5 stars, that one included. Then I read Don't You Cry by Mary Kubica. I really like her newer stuff. This is one of her older books. Again, this is actually an art copy. It's obviously been pretty beaten up. This book was fine. I gave it 3 stars. It was pretty slow paced. It was more of like a character thriller than a plot-based thriller. There was a twist in here that I didn't really see coming. The twist got me. I give it that. I didn't really like the male perspective that we read from in here. I don't even really remember how he's initially relevant to the story. But in this book, we're following Quinn, who is this girl's roommate, and she comes home one night and her roommate is not there. She doesn't really think anything of it, but then the next morning comes and her roommate's still not back, and then she starts finding like some little clues around the house that make her think like, oh my goodness, something sinister happened to my roommate. What was it? And that's pretty much it. But yeah, the twist got me. I think it was fine. It's just not something that I'm gonna reach for again. Then I'm giving away The Downstairs Girl, which you will see me read in a video that's probably going up next weekend. I'm gonna be honest, the video that this is for was supposed to go up this weekend, but I am sick. I'm sure you can tell by my voice, and I just haven't been doing the reading that I should have been doing for this video, so I don't think that it's gonna be done in time. So this video is going up in place of that video. We're following a Chinese woman in Atlanta, I believe in the 1890s or the beginning of the 1900s. I'm pretty sure it's the 1890s. She has a lot going on in her life, obviously huge discrimination at this point in time, and then the beginnings of like the women's rights movements, her own family issues, and she ends up writing for this newspaper under an anonymous name, kind of like a Dear Abby column, but like in the 1890s, right? So she's writing for that anonymously and also trying to make an impact and a change in the real world. And this was like a fun little historical fiction story. It's just young adult really isn't for me anymore. And like, I really struggle to find young adult books that I truly enjoy. I read this because it's been on my shelves forever. It had a premise that I was interested in. And again, it was like, I would say that this was a good book. It's just not something that I'm going to reach for again. Okay, then I'm giving away The Tea Dragon Society. Hold up. This was a 5 star. Why am I giving it away? Because I have the full box set and they are different size than this and they're hardback. So there's no reason for me to have 2 copies of this, especially when it was such an amazing book. I would love to donate this to my local bookstore or a little free library and let a kiddo or an adult that loves this type of thing fully enjoy this story, because it is really the most beautiful graphic novel I've ever read in my life. If you haven't read this series or you haven't heard of this series, which I don't know how you would have missed it, you must have been living under a rock, because I think it's like the most acclaimed graphic novel series out there, other than Heartstopper maybe. This is so beautiful. We're following just these girls and their tea dragons. They're learning about love and self-care, and like, it's just so cute. And the dragons are just like little cats and they're precious, and I think you should read it. Then I'm getting rid of The Mothers by Britt Bennett. I again read this recently. I enjoyed this story. I thought that it was really well written, but it's not something that really emotionally captured me or something that I feel like I'm going to want to pick up again in my life. I did give this 4 stars, which technically would allow it to stay on my shelves, but I don't think that this is a good representation of myself or what I like to read, and therefore I don't want to keep it around when someone else could enjoy this, because again, this has beautiful writing. I think the story is told in an interesting way. It doesn't do anything particularly special. We are just set kind of in this church community, following these 2 teenagers as they grow up, turn into adults, and deal with all of the different things in their lives. So again, I would recommend this to you. It's just a classic literary fiction following people and their struggles, and I think it was really well done. It's just not what I like to read typically. Next, I'm unhauling San Diego Zoo, which has been on my shelves for a long time. I bought it used. I spent like $2 on it. It has an interesting enough premise, but I never actually read this book. Sorry, I'm losing my voice, you guys. I'm just really sick. The premise sounded interesting, but the more that I look at this, the more that I think I'm never going to read this. Again, it has absolutely teeny tiny, minuscule font, 500 pages long, and I just don't think I care enough about what happens in this story to ever pick it up. So I'm gonna donate it, and that's that. Hi, Tinky. She's so cute. Okay, another book that I'm getting rid of that I haven't actually read is The Art of Racing in the Rain. I watched this movie. It was emotionally devastating, but I thought it was really beautiful and really well done. And I decided that I want to read the book, but I don't think that I want to read the book anymore. Okay, don't get me wrong. I like reading like sad girl books, but this book is just like, you read this if you just want to cry your eyes out from the very first page to the very end. And I don't think that that is an ideal reading experience. I respect if a book makes me cry, but I don't want to just be crying the whole time because the dog dies, right? Because I know that that's coming and I feel like I can't control myself. So I'm not going to read this. I'm not going to put myself through that, and I'm going to get rid of it. And the last book that I'm getting rid of in this video is The Host by Stephanie Meyer. Once again, I read this very recently. You can go watch my YA fantasy reading vlog if you care to hear my full thoughts. This book has been on my shelf since I was probably a freshman in high school, so we're going on like 9-10 years. Very, very long, and it's pretty traditional Stephanie Meyer format. We have a lot of nothing going on in here. A love triangle square shape. Really interesting dynamic. We're following this alien being that has been inserted into a human host body. Usually the human like spirit or mind goes away when the alien host enters in, but in this case that doesn't happen. So we have this kind of warring conflict between these two personalities living in the same human host body. The world's in kind of ruin. The human host wants to go see if her family's okay. The alien doesn't really want to do that, but then she starts thinking that maybe she does. And then they go on this whole adventure together and so many things happen. This is 3.5 stars. I really liked the beginning. I really liked the end. The main character had an obsession with Cheetos that was constantly brought up, and I didn't really understand why we were doing that, nor did I appreciate the 200 pages in the middle of this book where I was just reading the same like thing happening over and over again, which was essentially nothing, because that was wasting my time. And now I'm going to donate this and someone else can go through a very similar experience. Okay, friends, that's everything that we're getting rid of in this video. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you've read any of these, if you have thoughts on these, if you're going to pick up any of these. Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you in another video soon. Bye.